Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in this review, I'm really excited because I'll be talking about one of my absolute favorite lines from Roja Parfums, his Aouds collection. So if you're curious to know more about that, don't go away. So welcome back guys. Before we begin the review, as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button down below and the notification bell to be notified of any future videos and content. So as I mentioned, this will be a review of Roja's Aoud collection, his Aouds. This will not be including some of the other more Middle Eastern fragrances in the Aoud series like Qatar or UAE, those kinds of fragrances, but it'll be including the 6 that I have in my collection. So if you haven't, or if you weren't aware, Roja spent a considerable amount of time, a pretty significant amount of time for a perfumer in the Middle Eastern part of the world, in a lot of the parts of the world where they really harvest, where they really cherish oud, and they really understand it. And he really spent a whole lot of time getting to know its qualities, its nuances and characteristics, and in that, he was able to really truly develop these Aoud collection that we have before you. So let's get started. This is a ranked video, so I'll be starting with my least favorite all the way up to my most favorite. So that being said, let's start with the first one, and the first one is going to be Musk Aoud. So what is Musk Aoud? What is Musk Aoud all about? So Musk Aoud is aptly named Musk Aoud because it is a very musk-dominated fragrance. But in that nuance, in all those little intricacies, you get a very layered composition. So right away you get this very sweet indolic jasmine. The jasmine here is rather prominent in the opening, and it is jammy. Think of it like a jammy rose almost. And there's a very soft, opulent rose that's combined with that indolic jasmine. It's actually quite lovely. Yeah, the rose is quite romantic. It's very soft and subtle. It's a little bit powdery, but it's also very nicely played with that jasmine. And the oud here is not prominent whatsoever. I mean, there is oud here, definitely, but it is not a oud-based fragrance. So those of you who are watching, if you haven't sampled or haven't got your nose on any of Roja Dove's Aoud fragrances, fear not, these are not oud fragrances, meaning these are not fragrances that have oud take the center stage or the forefront. These fragrances really have the other surrounding notes as the key players, and Aoud really takes kind of a back seat. It really plays a supporting role in these productions. So you get a very creamy, buttery oud. It's not skanky, it's not animalic, but it is rather buttery to me, and it is by no means the center stage here. There's a musk mellow, which is rather sweet and floral, or otherwise known as ambrette. And the musk here is pungent and robust. It's very prominent for me. This is really the musk here, as it's drying down, is really wanting to be noticed, and it's really playing its part quite well here because it's really taking the kind of the foreground in those surrounding floral notes. There's an oak moss that I'm picking up here that's rather inky, and this is really describing itself as this is a chypre fragrance. So this is a chypre, if I haven't mentioned it, and this is giving you those underpinnings of a chypre fragrance with that oak moss and those softer florals and woods. And there's also a sweet vanillic tonka bean, which I think helps round out those otherwise darker, stronger musky notes, floral notes, a little bit sweeter. As it's transitioning from heart to base, you get a very nice vanillic tonka bean combination there, paired with sandalwood that gives it a very nice balance. So that is Musk Aoud. The next one at the number 5 spot is going to be from his Tutti Frutti line. I'm not a big fan of that naming of that particular collection, but it is what it is. This one is Fruity Aoud. And this is the frosted bottle, which I wish they made. They don't make this anymore. Why is Fruity Aoud at the 5 spot and not at number 3 or 2? I really like Fruity Aoud. It is a very well blended, kind of a fruity fragrance. So this is an Oriental Floral launched in 2015. I definitely get the floral aspect of this fragrance. It's a little bit misleading because it's not super oriental. It has oriental components, but this is rather fruity in the opening. So you get this Artemisia. Artemisia is rather bitter. It's very herbal, and it's very appropriate because it helps balance out, as it's drying down, those sweeter, more kind of fruity notes. It's similar to absinthe. If you've smelled absinthe before, if you kind of got your nose on it, it's a bit similar to absinthe. And there's a black currant accord, which is rather fruity, a bit peppery, helps transition from that top to heart, and it helps wrap around those sort of fruity candy notes quite well, and it's all balancing out. So Roja's fragrances and its compositions, as you know, and as I've spoken about in previous reviews, are so exquisitely blended. It is really hard to pick out individual notes, but I'm just telling you what I get off my skin. So there's a very salubrious orange blossom that's harmonized with these other candy notes. There's raspberry, rose, and strawberry. I'm definitely getting the raspberry and strawberry combination that's just giving it that fruity kind of a vibe, almost like a fruit basket. And there's a violet in there that's giving it a touch of powderiness, a touch of these floral nuances that really help elevate and transform these fragrances from just a fruity composition to a very rather complex fragrance. There's a very balsamic amorous as it's drying down. It's giving this rather a bitter, pungent, sour accord. And there's a very almost like furry oud. And the oud here is again very soft, it's very subtle, it's very luxurious. It's also very understated, so it's not an oud fragrance. None of these are oud fragrances again. These are all other notes that you're gonna be getting on your skin. And there's an alabanum here. Roja loves using alabanum and labdanum. So the alabanum here is rather arboreal, it's rather peppery, it's rather nuanced, and it's actually quite intricate. And the labdanum here is very prevailing. There's a kind of rather like a prevailing leather accord as it starts drying from heart to base. And that you'll start getting this almost leathery accord that helps, in my opinion, very much assist those softer, rather feminine notes of rose, of strawberry, of raspberry, of jasmine. You start giving this a little bit more of a masculine feel, at least help balancing out those that masculine, feminine kind of aspect. And then there's a patchouli, which gives us kind of an earthy dampness, an earthy woodiness with the sandalwood and the vanilla. Yeah, I like this one a lot. So these by the way, these two, Musk Aoud and Fruity Aoud, these two last me about, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours, if not more. Especially Musk Aoud lasts on my skin at least 10 plus hours in the cold weather. Really good one. So Fruity Aoud is at number 5. The next one is gonna come again at the number 4 spot from the Tutti Frutti line again. This one I like a little bit more than Fruity Aoud, and this one is Candy Aoud. So Candy Aoud is, as it's presented on the actual fragrance, on the cap and the actual placard, is a little bit more feminine leaning. But if you're somebody who likes candy or rather sweet smelling fragrances, almost gourmandish fragrances, this actually would be for you. So Candy Aoud is still in production, I believe. Fruity Aoud is no longer in production. This one has been discontinued. But why do I like Candy Aoud more? Well, let's find out. And I haven't worn this one in the cold weather in a while. I did try wearing a lot of these Aouds this week and last week in the warm weather just to kind of see what happens. No, guys, big mistake. These do not work in the warm weather. You can wear them in colder summer evenings and maybe cooler spring days or evenings, but these are definitely cold weather fragrances because they were super cloying in the warm weather. So right away, bergamot and grapefruit. Very prominent grapefruit note. If you're like slicing up grapefruit, fresh grapefruit you smell, that's what you get right off the bat. There's an apple accord that's paired with this banana. So banana in most fragrances that I've smelled isn't really done very well, but the banana in Candy Aoud gives a very tropical, almost beach-like vibe, but don't be misled. This is not a beachy fragrance by any means or any stretch of the imagination. This is very much a complex composition. So the banana gives it a tropical accord paired with a black currant and rose, which gives it, again, a bit of a peppery, somewhat a spicy feel that's kind of almost very strangely goes with those apple and banana notes. So as it's drying down, you get this very cozy, very subtle amber accord. It's almost like wrapping yourself in this amber blanket. It's viscous, it's resonant, it's sweet, but it's also a touch, so it's not a very ambery overall feel, but it's helping balance out, again, those notes. So as it's drying down, there's almost like a sweet, demulcent balsam fir that you're getting here. That's very nicely playing off that amber as it's transitioning into the heart. And that's what I get a lot. I like this one because it's giving me kind of a warm, demulcent feel. And the cashmere wood, or the cashmere in here, is giving you a very musky, woodsy accord. And I forgot to mention, this is an oriental floral, actually no, an oriental vanilla. This was also launched in 2015. The notes behind all of these are, of course, Roja Dove. And the labdanum here is again giving almost a leathery feel, like a leathery like a rawhide kind of a feel. Not like cheap leather, but like expensive, high quality, high-end leather. Paired with that orris, and that musk and that damp, earthy patchouli, but it's very slight and it's kind of just a touch. It's not at all overbearing. And there's also a rhubarb chord here. As a child, we used to go to Maine every summer, and we would just drive from Jersey to Maine, and we would go stop at these little farmers markets, and my mom would pick these wild strawberries and wild rhubarb, and she would make wild strawberry rhubarb pie. And it was one of my favorite things growing up ever. It was so delicious. And the rhubarb in here smells exactly like that rhubarb. Don't mind the beeping outside, guys. There's just, I don't know, there's always people outside. It's like mouth-watering, it's fruity, it's vegetal, it's really, oh, I love it, it's so good. And the saffron is pairing with that other leather note. So the saffron here is rather leathery itself. So it's savory and also leathery at the same time, and it's helping giving this a little bit more of a masculine feel, but also balancing out those other notes. It's giving this a very intimate, almost earthy quality. The longevity on my skin, again, is really good. I get over 8 hours. So that is Candy Aoud at the number 4 spot. So what is at the number 3 spot? Well, the number 3 spot and the number 3, 2, and 1 spots could have easily been in different orders. These are what I feel like in my collection as I stand right now, but these can change. These orderings can change at any point. So the next one at the number 3 spot is going to be Aoud Parfums. So just the regular Aoud, and this is the vintage paper label. Shout out to my man Brian, by the way, for hooking it up, if you're watching. So Roja Aoud Parfum is an Oriental Spicy, and quite aptly named an Oriental Spicy, because to me this is rather Oriental. So let's spray it on. So lemon and lemon verbena for me are the two things I get right off the bat. It's not the lemon verbena that you get in Creed's Green Irish Tweed, but it is somewhat similar. It's herbally, it's green, it's rather refreshing, but it goes away very quickly. And then there's this very indolic jasmine with the Rose de Mai. For those of you who don't know, Rose de Mai, otherwise known as Rose of May, only grows in the month of May. That's why it's called Rose de Mai. And it has to be cultivated in a very specific point in that time, otherwise you lose that flower for the rest of the year. It's fruity, it's a touch feminine, but it's also very whimsical. It's very happy and bright. It's really nice. I find the rose that he uses here is rather romantic. And by the way, so the Aouds here that I'll be mentioning are almost rose oud combos. So they're almost like, not all of them, but so like this one, for example, is very much like a rose oud combo. The Aoud here is, the agar wood is again very sophisticated, very elegant, understated, but also very, very posh. It's very buttery. There's a warm cinnamon here. It's very cozy. It's enthralling. It's almost it's like this sophisticated, enthralling cinnamon that's wrapping around those darker notes. That gives this, in my opinion, a very warm Oriental feel, or at least it's supporting those notes. saffron here. So the saffron here is also, I mean, there's quite a lot of saffron in these different compositions. And here it's very savory. It's almost like effortless. It doesn't really work very hard to be known. And of course, there's an ambergris accord here. So the ambergris is very salty. It's almost airy. It's very light, but it is there, and it's helping, again, to harmonize and marry all those other oriental darker notes. And and as it's drying down, again, I get this leather accord, and this leather accord it's raw. It's a little bit baroque, but it's very well done. It's not a leather fragrance, but it's really helping to establish that base, that oriental base. It's giving almost like a smoky raw feel. The longevity on this one, because it's an older bottle as well, is absolutely outstanding. I get easily 12 to 14 hours, easily, if not over like 16 hours. I can still smell this on my skin after I shower. It's really awesome. So that's number 3, Roja Aoud. So what is the number 2 spot? This one was really hard for me to pick because I love this one so much. This one is the last of the Tutti Frutti line. If you haven't guessed already, this one is Sweetie Aoud. So Sweetie Aoud is easily one of my top 5 favorite gourmands of all time. Hands down, no questions asked, end of story. First thing that comes to mind, comment down below, guys, if you've gotten this as well. The first thing that comes to your mind is buttery, flaky croissants, French croissants. You're walking by a pastry, you're walking by a bakery, you're smelling all the baked goods and the pastries and coming fresh out of the oven. And the first thing that comes to mind on my skin is this really buttery, really wonderful patisserie accord, which for me, this has a patisserie accord. If you don't know, literally Roja Dove created an accord. It's synthetic, but it's literally smells to be of a French patisserie or French bakery, which I think is freaking awesome. It's super cool. God damn it. This is so freaking awesome. If you are a gourmand lover, this is a gourmand lover's dream. If you have not gotten your nose in this one, guys, get your nose on Roja Dove's Sweetie Aoud. There's really no detectable oud in this one at all for me. It's there, if it's there, it's very, very slight. What you get are that buttery, warm, flaky croissants. There's a resinous cardamom here. It's almost like resinous and sticky, almost like it's been like diluted or distilled in like this simple syrup, almost kind of a feel. There's a cumin here, and the cumin here I'm picking up is very like lustrous and sparkly. It's like a little bit effervescent. And there's a cypriol oil here that's a little bit, a touch powdery. So it's giving that a little bit of a powdery feel. And I think there's orris root in here that's also helping to kind of give this a powdery feel. But this is not a powdery fragrance. This is of course a gourmand. But with those very sweet accords, that powderiness is really helping to establish a very well-rounded composition. And the alabanum here is very sticky as well. It's like honeyed, it's like glazed with this alabanum. And I forgot to mention, this is an Oriental, I think an Oriental vanilla, I believe. There's Gurjan balsam, there's patchouli, like a wet kind of earthy, again, patchouli. Actually, this is an Oriental floral, I think, not an Oriental vanilla. So I think it's an Oriental floral. Yeah, there's this labdanum here, but the labdanum here is not smoky, it's not leathery. It's rather almost going in a sweet, musky, vanillic direction, as opposed to other labdanums as you've seen in the other compositions. Here it's almost sweet and almost savory and just adding to those other gourmand elements. It's really awesome. Longevity on my skin is easily 8 hours, if not 10. I love wearing this one. When I'm craving something sweet, I almost always reach for Sweetie Aoud, if not other favorite gourmands, but this one is an absolute favorite of mine. So what is the number 1 spot? Well, if you haven't guessed already, there's only really one more to talk about. And this one is one that I absolutely fell in love with completely, but it took me time. So I didn't love this one right away. It wasn't love at first sniff. I wasn't completely enamored. At first I smelled it and I thought it was a little bit too mature. And honestly, I thought it smelled a little bit like a grandma. It happens. And I didn't like it. I kind of dismissed it. I had a sample. I wore it more and more and more. The more I fell in love with it, just like other fragrances. But this one is none other than Amber Aoud. So Amber Aoud is a little bit of a misleading title or misleading name. This is not an amber fragrance, this is an ambergris fragrance. So it's ambergris The ambergris he uses is actual real ambergris, not the synthetic accord. So it's actually an extremely expensive ingredient to manufacture, to obtain, and to distill. Jesus, if you guys have smelled this one, you know how good this one is. It's very classic, but yet very modern at the same time. So there's a lemon or a lime that's paired with a bergamot note. It's very dynamic and it's almost like pulsating. There's a rose, it's a very jammy indolic rose that's met with this jasmine. So the rose and the jasmine are quite jammy together and very indolic. The ylang ylang here is giving this very almost like a rich sour balance, like a rich sour accord at the top. But it's dry, as it's drying down, you're still getting that jammy rose, that indolic jasmine, and a touch of that ylang ylang. The fig here is giving this a almost a lactonic gourmand aspect. A little bit is giving this touch of sweetness. And the Aoud here is very well done. It's one of my favorite. It actually is my favorite oud used in all of these fragrances. It's illustrious. It's well composed. But it's also it's extremely elegant. It's very soft as well. So there's also I believe there's a cinnamon accord that I'm getting here. Yeah, the cinnamon is it's tenacious. It's extremely cozy. It's very warm. There's a bit of a delicate saffron here. It's almost, again, glossy. That's harmonized as it's drying down into the heart with this inky oak moss. So again, it's giving the underpinnings of an oriental. And then you have this ambergris, this very salty, buoyant, vivacious ambergris that's helping to give us a lighter, more of a uplifting feel. This is an oriental, I believe an oriental spicy. And this one is one that absolutely has to be worn, in my opinion, in colder weather. These are all sophisticated fragrances. These are not meant to be worn, in my opinion, in high heat. I think you should wear these when you're trying to impress. Definitely something that's going to be an elegant occasion, more sophisticated. Your attire should match the elegance and exquisite nature of these fragrances. These really scream luxury. So if you want to impress, I think you should wear an attire to match the sophisticated, luxurious nature of these fragrances. So that is my review, guys, of Roja, the Aouds in Roja Parfums. Let me know down below in the comments. Have you smelled any of these? And if you have, what is your order? What would be your 1 through 6? Do you have these in a different order? What's your favorite? What's your least favorite, and why? So as always, guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel. It means the world to me. As always, stay safe and take care of each other. Bye, guys.